Glad that you people could make it here, even though it's Wednesday and we're 3 days in BCB. So thank you very much for showing up, those of you who are still here. My name is Hardeep, and I'm very happy to be here at BCB again. BCB has a special place in my heart. I've been coming here since 2008, 9, the very early stages of BCB. And this was before all this lovely online content we have, all this information we have. So BCB was basically the platform where we came to learn, to get inspired, with eager eyes, and then share experiences and knowledge. So, and now for the recent few years, I'm actually able to stand on this side of the stage and hopefully give a little bit back and give some inspiration to some new people, just the way I got myself from BCB in the very beginning. And so the topic here is minerality, and it's a topic that I've been chasing for the past few years, and it's kind of a topic that no one really touched upon. It's used in food world, in the wine world, but not really in cocktails. And the more I scratched the surface, the bigger the topic got. And I thought, this is something that we need to talk about. So that is why I actually pursued it and pitched this at the top. And hopefully I'll plant some seeds, get the ball rolling, and then you guys can pick it up and take it even further, and we can develop this category even bigger and from where it is now. So before we move forward, a quickly introduction about myself. My name is Hardeep Rehal. I'm from Copenhagen. Indian heritage, UK born, based in Copenhagen, Denmark. I've been in this industry for about 20 years. So I've seen the development of the cocktail industry from, the modern age of cocktail industry, from the early stages to where we are now. And I have a background as an engineer, which has kind of shaped me to where I am today, and how I work with things has given me a lot of tools to work systematically, and this eager to solve problems, also even solving problems that aren't even there yet, which is where all the fun lies. I have a cocktail company called Cocktail Solutions, where it is very education forward. I'm trying to bridge the gap between our industry and academia to focus more on education, doing a lot of interdisciplinary collaborations with food science and even with the tech world to just stir up the pot and see what we can get in return. And lots of fun things come back, and one of the things is this topic I want to talk about today, which is minerality. I also co-own a high-volume cocktail bar and club in Copenhagen called Bloom, which is fun and games, so I kind of have my fingers in multiple aspects of the bar industry. So, the topic is called minerality, the forgotten dimension in cocktails. I think it's more appropriate to say overlooked, but forgotten is a bit more dramatic, so trying to catch people's attention. But what does minerality actually mean? Like, how can we define it? So we have sourness, we know, comes from acidity. Sweetness comes from sugars. Even umami, we know, comes from glutamate. But minerality, what is it actually? How do we define it? Is it just a mouthfeel? Is it also an aroma? Is it both at the same time? So because we can often be very romantic on how we describe flavors. So there are certain agreements on what minerality means, especially in the wine world, but there's also division. And this division comes from the science people. Because we can be romantic on how we describe things, like, this tastes like a rainbow in March. And then the science people go like, hey, that's not a thing. So it's this kind of, division that happens between what minerality actually is and how we use it as a flavor descriptor. So that's why I'm going to dive into it and then hold on to this division part, because we're going to crack on a little bit into how this division actually is. So we use this. We use it a lot in food. These descriptors are already present. So there's things like oysters, oyster shells, saline. We cook things in seawater. Things like beach herbs, squid ink, and baking things in clay ovens, minerality there, cooking food on hot stones, serving them on slate plates. All of this mineral descriptors are already used in the food world. So there's already vocabulary connected to it, and the chefs are already using this as a tool to convey a flavor and to convey an experience. The wine world has really catching on to what minerality actually is. They're really catching on to how to use this term to describe flavor. So aroma-wise, things like limestone, chalk, and flint is being used a lot. And texture-wise, in wine world, we're using things like lean, tight, crisp mouthfeel, all describing minerality. A good example is Chablis, which is the Chardonnay grape. It's a very mineral expression of the grape, while on the other hand, you're going to get a very buttery Burgundy at the same time. So the wine world is using minerality to describe an expression and a flavor. And even Riesling, like minerality is the core of their production. Like the terroir with chalk and slate plates comes to the expression of the wine. So it is already there, and all of these are desirable traits. We want it, we seek it, and we use these traits to navigate to what we want to drink and how we want to dictate how we want those things to taste. And even in wine and food, so using minerality as navigation, we can combine things. So combining a mineral-forward food like oysters with a mineral-forward wine and champagne to do complementary flavor pairing, all in the mineral world, even in a contrast way where we're using the same mineral-forward wine and champagne to contrast something fatty like hollandaise. So it already exists, and the food and wine world are already using it. And there's so many possibilities for us to capture and use it because we can add things, we can combine things. What about cocktails? We rarely use it in cocktails. It is very lightly touched upon. Why aren't we doing that yet? Like, even though we have all the means to, we have all the possibilities to use the kitchen, all the possibilities to utilize wine, why aren't we using these terms yet? Like, I've recently only seen a few examples of, let's say, oyster shell infusions and oyster shell distillates, but that's more of a one flavor to describe something maritime rather than diving into minerality as a category. Like, we're doing ourselves a disservice. Like, we're kind of missing out a whole expression of flavor dimension that the food and wine world are using that we are not using yet. Why haven't we jumped aboard the mineral train yet? Like, we are sitting in the corner of the mineral party while food and wine are dancing and having all the fun. And I think it's time that we kind of join the party and become a bit more mineral. So circling back to classic cocktail building blocks, like the sweet and sour combination is the holy grail of cocktails. Like that's what we do. Sweet and sour balance with aromatic flavor on top. That is a template on how we've been building cocktails, and it works and is great. Then we had bitterness in cocktails, kind of as a separate category, but along the way in the time, we've kind of understood that this bitterness can be used to manipulate sweet and sour aromas, to change texture, and to enhance this flavor note. So it became a part of the classic building blocks. Recent times also, we have salinity, so saltiness, not to make a salty cocktail, but to use salt to add to the classic building blocks of sweet and sour and bitter to enhance flavor and to manipulate these flavor categories. Recent times, moving a bit forward, we even started to use fat. And fat in the form of, fat washes, aromatic extractions and fats to manipulate the classic building blocks, sweet, sour, salt, and bitter, to give more texture and more mouthfeel. We've even moved on to umami, glutamates from mushrooms, from seaweeds, from garum, to give another dimension, another texture to the classic building blocks, which means fat and umami have become a part of our classic building blocks of how to make a cocktail. So every building block moves backwards to manipulate the original flavor. Why not minerality? So we use fat and umami to manipulate texture and mouthfeel. Minerality can be used also to give a mouthfeel, texture, and aroma profile that drives it into another direction. So we're inching ourselves closer and closer to food and the possibilities that the food world is using, playing with texture and mouthfeel by also using minerality. So it's time that we add that to our classic building block of cocktails. So the controversy. Minerals versus minerality. This is where the division actually happens, where the science world goes like, hey, what is this? So there are actual minerals, and then there's the term minerality. Those are two kind of different things, but still linked. So we can't actually taste minerals. And when we say we can, that's not necessarily the case. What we are tasting is a compound of mineral structures with aroma and acid that leads our thoughts towards something that has mineral capabilities or a mineral experience. So actual minerals we cannot taste. What I want to focus on here are, we have minerals around us all the way, like so many minerals and nutrients growing upon us. but I want to focus on the 7 most used minerals that are used in food, and these are the ones like calcium chloride, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and sulfur. We find them in food, we find them in the ground, we find them everywhere. If we put any of these minerals in our mouth on its own, we won't taste anything. If we eat them in a larger quantity, at best we will feel like a slightly salty sensation, but they do not have any flavor, they do not have any taste that we can recognize. Taste and flavor only happens when they try to combine. So lucky for us, these minerals, they become friends. So a good combination that we all know is sodium chloride, which is regular table salt. That we can try, we're inching ourselves closer to something we can taste. Calcium chloride is chalk. So when these minerals start to bond and create mineral compounds, that is when we're starting to inch ourselves closer to something that we can taste and we can use as a flavor combination. So this is actual minerals. Then we have the term minerality. So imagine that we have a sensation they want to describe, let's say a rock. The rock is a cookie, and the minerals are all the ingredients that we have to use to bake this cookie. So we have these mineral compounds happening in nature, and it's when they form, combine with acidity and aroma, that is when we can assess them as something that we can taste and we can use them for a flavor. So all of these things, they fall into like the mineral box, and we try to describe them. Like a rock is more than just a rock, it's a combination of minerals and aromas and flavor. And that is why minerality is kind of this axiomatic category. Like we created a category that we try to describe with things that we can't really taste, but leading to a sensation that we want to describe. Which means the category is open. We can keep adding to this category of minerality by things that fit into the mineral box. And then we can divide minerality into 2 things. Minerality as an aroma, minerality as a texture. And aroma-wise, we kind of describe minerality as various things that we experience in life. A place, let's say seaside, we want to express what the seaside feels like, that has a mineral feel to it. Let's say something that actually has a mineral forward content, like oyster shells. Actual things, we can describe them as mineral. Also we can describe, let's say, a process, the process of crushing rocks. We can smell that and we can describe that as a minerality, as a mineral process. And also like a happening, let's say rainfall. When rainfall hits the ground and releases an aromatic substance called petrichor, we kind of put that into a mineral box as well. So minerals are actual things that we cannot taste, but minerality are combinations of minerals and occurrences that we try to put in a box and call minerality. So minerality as a texture is also something that we kind of try to describe. Often by its own, we would describe it as something dry and hard, something stony, something gritty. But once we combine mineral compounds with acids, they change into something crisp, something creamy, something astringent. They kind of tighten up acidity by adding minerality to it. So imagine that you're adding something mineral to an acid-forward cocktail. It's going to tighten up the acidity, it's going to soften up the astringency. So minerals and acidity have a close relationship. So that's how we can use minerality as a texture as well. Without acids, more hard and dry surfaces, and then with acid it becomes more sensation that's crisp and clean. So as a mouthfeel, we also have the sensation of dryness. And we experience dryness in various shapes and forms. And I want to make a comparison to tannins, which is also a dry phenomenon that we experience in wine. And I'm using tannins for a reason, because I'll use that as an example later on in the presentation, and then it will make a bit more sense. But if we kind of focus on how the mouthfeel is with mineral forward ingredients and then tannins kind of pulls the mouth together a little bit. While a mineral feeling, it flattens the mouth. It works more of like a pressure in the back of the mouth. And that pressure creates length and texture with a more flattened feeling. And that's basically the main difference between how they work as dryness. Then you have more heavy feeling in the mouth with tannins, they can feel heavy. Mineral dryness is a bit more light and elegant. And then, this pressure in the mouth from minerality, the tannin part is a bit more prickly and alive in the mouth. So if you want to create dryness, working with minerality is basically a way to navigate and avoid the things we don't want from tannins and still create dryness in the cocktail. So we have minerals growing around us, and we have them occurring in various shapes and forms, and it can be kind of overwhelming to navigate through what minerals is and how we can use them in cocktails and how to describe them. So to make things a bit more systematic and focus on the ones that we use the most, I've tried to divide them into two categories: land minerals and sea minerals, to kind of make it a bit more tangible, a bit more approachable, and how kind of we can use them in these flavor descriptors. Land minerals are what we see around us: rocks, flints, stones, and things like that. They occur naturally, and these minerals I call magnesium and metal-driven minerals, so metal-driven forward minerals. They occur on the ground, and granite mostly consists of magnesium, silica, and metals such as aluminum and iron. That is what the rock consists of. And over time, with decomposing plant life and water pressure, it will turn into clay. So all clay that we know is what used to be rocks, pressurized and decomposed, and that is what we use as a mineral, a flavor descriptor in food and in wine, and now also in cocktails. So everything is kind of connected. So these magnesium forward land minerals I would describe as more heavy and a bit more complex. On the other side, we have sea minerals that are more calcium driven forward. So all of these that you see here, chalk, oyster, and limestone, have one thing in common, and that is calcite. And calcite is the crystallized form of calcium chloride, which occurs naturally in all of these things. So how they're connected is that you will find this in water, and slowly water will evaporate and turn into limestone. And also, oyster shells will slowly decompose, and then water will compress it together to create chalk. So all chalk and all limestone are created from decomposed oyster and seashells in the sea, and everything is mostly composed of calcium chloride. So we have these sea minerals, which are a bit more light and a bit more delicate, and the land minerals before, which are a bit more heavy and a bit more complex. So they both work in different ways, but fall into the mineral category. Which leads me to the first taste example that I want to give you. So we walk through all of this theoretically, what minerals is, how to describe minerality, these flavor descriptors, but what does it actually taste like? So this is a distillate from edible clay and edible chalk. And how is it edible? Is this clay is very low, little to none heavy metals, but has all the other minerals. And chalk is purely calcium chloride, which is macerated and distilled in a rotovap, high rep, high volume, and there's in a high proof alcohol, molasses based, just for you to have an idea when we talk about mineral ingredients, mineral flavor descriptors, what it actually means, to have a comparison. This might be, very concentrated form. I've diluted it down to 30%, so it's a bit more easy to taste. But just to have an idea when all these land and sea minerals are combined, how to look for them. So when you taste something later on, you kind of know what to look for and how to navigate in these flavors. So give that a little sip. It's just a little sip, so you can kind of have an idea what minerality can taste like. I call this a mineral distillate, combination of chalk and clay distilled. You can also use this as an active ingredient in drinks. If you want to give an extra dimension or a flavor profile, this is a way to use as well. So back to land minerals. Clay. Clay is the most used mineral forward material that we use since the dawn of time. So all the way back to the Dolia clay pots that's been used to ferment early days, and it's good for fermenting because clay is porous and clay is also alkaline. So when you ferment in something that's alkaline, it grabs acidity, it lowers acidity, so it's very, very good for malolactic fermentation and anaerobic fermentations. So that's why clay pots have been used since the dawn of time fermentation and are still used today from certain wine producers to create an expression. Clay stills have been used, still being used to produce mezcal, to arak. Again, it's an alkaline environment, so it does also work as a filter, just like copperwood, but in a kind of different era of flavors, also because it's alkaline. And the porous makes it breathable, so it kind of, it subtracts flavor, it also adds these earthy notes that we all kind of desire when we taste a really good mezcal with arak. And then we have the amphora, all the way back to the Roman times, to store and age wine. And again, aging in amphora would give old Roman wine, its very particular flavor characteristic, which is earthy and quite soft, because the alkaline environment in the clay is going to grab the acidity and soften up the acidity and give the wine a bit more softer flavor. Which is why I think we should start aging our cocktails in clay. So just like with the wine, clay pots are very breathable, which means they work a lot like a wood barrel would. It will breathe, it will access CO2, it will throw in oxygen, so they have this development like aging a spirit in a clay pot. Again, it's the alkaline environment, because clay is a mineral, it's basic, it has a very high pH. So having something acidic aging in a cocktail, in a clay pot, will round off the edges, make the acidity a bit softer, and balance it out. And also giving it like soft, earthy notes. And these are all kind of desirable traits in a cocktail. And the main difference here is, if you want to give softness and you want to age your cocktail, using clay versus wood is you can still add age, you can still add softness, without adding wood tannins, without adding vanillin. So if you just want to soften your drink and without adding the wood notes, clay is actually the way to move forward. Also, it gives this lovely earthy note and earthy flavors. So we're going to have another drink coming up very, very soon, which is my version of how you can use minerality in cocktails. So this is what I call a clay margarita. Mentioned before that clay pots have been used for fermentation as well, and one of the things that have been used to ferment the clay is a phenomenon called miso, fermented soybeans. So also like this lovely earthy mineral forward paste that has been fermented in clay. So that is why I've used that as an ingredient as well. So I made a margarita with blanco tequila to kind of give a very clean expression, and a white miso curacao. So instead of orange curacao, I've used white miso to give this depth, complexity, and very earthy note, which is mineral forward. Acids to just balance it out, avoiding citrus in this case, because I want the earth flavor to be forward. And then it's aged in clay. So the drink you're going to taste here very soon has only been in clay for about a week. And if you taste it, here it comes, you can kind of feel the earthy notes, and you'll feel that the acidity is actually quite rounded off, and the astringency is much more mellow, and it kind of has this lovely mineral forward flavor. So we talked about calcium chlorides and calcium forward flavors and calcium forward ingredients. We had chalk, which mostly consists of calcium chlorides. Then we had seashells, which mostly consist of calcium chloride and calcites. There's another ingredient that is not necessarily from the sea, but kind of shows us how things are connected, which mostly consists of calcium chloride, are eggshells. So like chickens drink water, they absorb calcium chloride, and this calcite turns into crystallized form and makes the shell of an egg. Just like clay aging would be porous and be breathable, a calcite shell, just like eggshell, would also be porous and breathable. So oxygen can come in, CO2 can come out. That's why eggs are so great. But the shell on its own is 99% calcium chloride and a little bit of other biomass. But that makes it a great source for calcium. And it's an ingredient that we have in the bar. It's an ingredient that we use all the time. And so instead of we have to try to source for chalk and we have to go to the bottom of the sea to go for seashells, if we want to add calcium to our drink, we can just use eggshells. How to transform eggshells into a drink, you have various methods. I don't know if you've ever, like, in an omelette, got an eggshell in your mouth. It's not super delicious to eat. But we can change its shape and form, and make it a bit more applicable to food and a bit more applicable to cocktails. So what I did here, I took eggshells and I boiled them in water. And the reason I did that was to remove the him and remove all the little gunk that's inside, to clean them up a little bit. And it's just like a 10-minute boil. And because I wanted to make them really, really brittle, I baked them in the oven for like 20 minutes, 400 degrees, to make them really, really crisp and dry, and then crush them and grind them into a powder. So this powder here, because I removed all the gunk by boiling it, And then really brittle. This is like almost pure calcium powder. And this is also how nutrients are added to food, and nutrients are added to like to pills and things like that. So this powder can be used in its form to add calcium. But I want to make it a bit more soluble in drinks, so to go one step further. Calcium is very basic, so the opposite of that is something very, very acidic. So that is why I introduced introducing acidic into the calcium and created a compound called calcium acetate. So the vinegar is a 5% vinegar, and I add 10% by weight eggshells to it. So all the vinegar kind of eats all the calcium, and then it excretes calcium acetate and CO2. So the CO2 will eventually, leave the whole compound. And what will be left at the very end is all the acid has been eaten. All the acid has been eaten by the calcium, and you have this compound called calcium acetate solution. You can boil this down, and you'll have calcium acetate, which is also used to put in food for health benefits and whatnot. But it also has a very specific flavor. So I kept the solution as a calcium acetate, and using that as an active ingredient to capture this mineral-forward flavor and to give a specific mouthfeel in cocktails. So this is a very easy step to do. You can all do it kind of at home. Just need an oven and vinegar. You can also use higher vinegar, then the process will go faster. You have to pop the eggshells, but it's very, very easy to do. And then this calcium acetate solution can be used in many shapes and forms, just to add dryness and also just to add flavor. Which kind of leads me to the last taste example that's going to come out, which I call the mineral martini. And I wanted to make a very clean expression on something that captures this elegant, light, calcium-forward minerality, unlike the margarita you had before, which was heavy on the earth minerals, which was aged in clay, had this more complexity and heaviness to it, but kind of softened out the acidity. The mineral martini is a bit more light expression, a bit more forward, a bit more crisp and clean, just like the flavor descriptors we would use in wine, but because we use the calcium acetate to round off a little bit of acidity, and also round off the acidity that will occur naturally in the vermouth. So it kind of has a reaction while you're making the drink. So in the drink you're going to get now, I have a gin, and to kind of forward the minerality, I made a vermouth from Riesling. Again, capturing the terroir, capturing the calcium, and also adding a little bit of the calcium acetate as you would use a bitter, and as you would use any kind of a tincture. And then since you have this leftover eggshell powder, you can use that to bake. You can use it in food, and I made a little twirl on it and made it on top. You're not going to get the garnish here today, but that's kind of the drink I made. So the last drink you're going to get here is the mineral eggshell martini. Expressing the seaside and the calcium part of the minerals.
Thank you.
So all in all, diving into the world of minerality is basically, we can manipulate taste, we can manipulate mouthfeel, we can manipulate texture, and we can use it to add it on to already known cocktails. So here I just took a classic recipe of the martini, and then I added minerality to it, and it changed the whole expression of the drink. Just like with the margarita before, I added minerality to it. It's a classic margarita. It changed the expression of the margarita. It made it more earthy, it made it a bit more heavy, and giving these like lovely earthy tones that we want to add to it to kind of change the expression. And that was kind of my quick walkthrough of minerality. It's a very, very big topic. So I kind of want to just scratch the surface a little bit, open up the dialogue, because it can get very chemistry heavy, it can get very, very technical, and it just goes on and on and on. So just like presenting the options of what minerals actually are, what minerality means, how we can use it, and how we can add it to cocktails and manipulate flavor. And hopefully you guys can pick it up and we can dive into this category even further. So let's grab on to minerality. Taste the mineral martini, and let's add another dimension to our cocktails. There we go. If you're curious, I have some edible clay and edible chocolate here. If you want to taste it and munch on something, then more than welcome to come up. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you very much.